We're here with Linda Cohn. Linda, more than 5,000 sports centers. Did you ever think that you'd be doing it this long and still doing it this well?
You know, thanks, Ed. It's great to be here and great talking with you. Yeah, I can't believe it. I can't believe, when they said that number to me and that no other person, male or female, has done that many sports centers. To answer your question, I didn't really give it much thought, actually. Could I have been doing and been here at ESPN so long? Because I just enjoyed every show I ever did, and my approach was always make believe someone's seeing you for the very first time and prove to them that you know what you're talking about.
So when you started back then, what was it like? What was Sports Center like? And it was really, you really kind of started right when that wave was really starting to take off.
Yeah, I started in July of 1992, and people think I was there at the beginning, but the beginning of ESPN was 1979. But in 1992, it was like pre-Sports Center commercials. And the reason why I bring that up, Ed, is because that was the first time where management allowed us to show off personality. So then once those commercials in the, I think they started 95, 96, something around that, right? So once those started, then we, as Sports Center anchors, were really allowed to show off fun personalities and have catchphrases and make sports not only about informing, but entertaining.
Was there, I've read interviews, was there pressure early on? You talked about the catchphrases. Was there pressure early on for you to have catchphrases, and was that did that kind of get maybe a little bit too far at one point?
Yeah, I don't want to use the word pressure to have them, but I felt like everyone around me had a catchphrase and were finding success, and sometimes it was their ticket to do more Sports Center commercials, and I'm like, if only I had a catchphrase, right? So I would try out a few of them, but it really didn't really fit, even though a lot of people like certain things that I said, like For the Love of Elevation was one that was really big, but I got in trouble by thinking up of one catchphrase.
I was going to ask you, Mike Piazza.
Yeah, the Mike Piazza, and I mentioned that in my book when I wrote my book Cohn back in '08, where I just thought it would be funny as ever. I'm a Met fan and happened to be Mike Piazza up at bat. And all I would say was, whoever it was up at bat, and I just said, in this case of Mike Piazza, master batter. And then all of a sudden, my boss, of course, at the time, Norby Williamson, called me into his office like that next morning and basically said, what is this about? What did you say last night on Sports Center? Don't say it again. So that was the end of master batter.
Long may it live, right?
Yeah.
So back then, what was the mandate for you guys? And how did, and working with John Walsh, who kind of conceived, or at least his fingerprints are all over this thing in transforming Sports Center. What was that like for someone who was young in the business, and what was kind of the mandate back then?
Well, John had it going on correctly. And when I say that, I mean he wanted us to get it right, first and foremost. It's okay to entertain, and it's good to have chemistry, on-air chemistry. But if your writing was not up to par, he was really big when he ran this place with the written word. So even though you're writing for TV where it's more conversational, you had to know your facts and be able to express it correctly. And that's what he always said would set us apart. Not the catchphrases 100%. Sure, that's a small piece of the pie, but the bigger piece of the pie was getting it right and expressing your thoughts accurately.
And that's interesting that you say that, because I work with a lot of broadcast type students, and they want to be next Linda Cohn or Steve Levy or whatever. Right. And I always say, you better learn how to write.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it always registers, but you have to. What was your background as far as writing?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I did not really get that message in college. I went to a wonderful university, Oswego State, but I also played ice hockey for 4 years there. I had a lot of other things going on. I had good balance in college, right? It wasn't just all about the skill set, but I didn't really learn to write until I got out of college. Really learned to write. In my previous jobs that I got before ESPN, when I was a newscaster on radio, and then a sportscaster on radio, and then cable TV before ESPN on Long Island. And that's when certain bosses would point out mistakes I made. I mean, I'm talking about an easy mistake, a grammatical error. It was embarrassing. This is not even like writing poetry for Teller. This was just ABCs of writing. And then once I realized, wow, no one's going to respect me. No one will care how much I know about sports if I don't know how to write. So that's a good message you're giving to your students.
So you started in 1992. Now women are much more prevalent in sports media. Back then, not so much. What was that like for you to be a woman here at ESPN with such a high-profile role in SportsCenter?
Right. I mean, I tried not to think about it so much. I just thought about, as I mentioned earlier, which is important and it's worth repeating, that I never rested on any laurels. I don't care what show they put me on or what position they put me on. I knew just like that they could take me off that position, take me out of that chair, or fire me, right? So I knew I always had to not only meet their expectations, but exceed their expectations. And I tell a story where, my first contract with ESPN, I almost got fired. Right? I mean, I almost got fired because I wasn't reaching their expectations. But they didn't give me any feedback. I had no idea. I thought I was doing great. Until they gave me feedback and basically made me a lame duck and said, we believe in you. We know you can do better. Here's how you can do better. It was like a kick to the gut. I didn't see it coming. But I took their advice. I did what they said. And I honed my skills of doing highlights, different things like that. Was better at expressing my knowledge. And it all worked out 24 years later.
So you're expressing your knowledge. They wanted people to have perspective and, opinions, yes?
Yeah, well, they wanted, if I had opinions, they wanted me to be able to, with numbers and stats, to back it up, right? To show off that knowledge in a professional way, but do it conversationally. And over highlights, we get something called a shot sheet, right? I'm sure you've heard talked about this and with many of people.
But they don't know it. So I mean, basically, you're not. When you do a highlight, you're not going off a script. You're improvising, right?
Right, pretty much. I mean, a shot sheet is basically telling you which player is at bat, or which running back has the ball and ran for 10 yards. It's up to you to add to that, whether it's Le'Veon Bell and he's had he ran for such and such a year ago and here he goes for 9 and pick you add to it. Or if you wanted to add entertainment to the facts, it's up to you. So a shot sheet just is like a skeleton thing of what's coming. So most of the time with these highlights, Ed, just as the viewer is seeing it for the first time, so are we as the anchor, especially doing all those years I did nighttime sports center. You never got to see highlights in advance. You really had to know your stuff. So getting back to why they didn't think I was reaching their expectations early on, they heard me around the newsroom that how much I knew sports. They wanted to hear more of it and my opinions and my passion over the highlights on television. And once I was able to say, oh, wow, that's okay, I can do that. Oh, yeah, that's what we like about you. That's why you were hired. Okay, great. I'm going to have enough confidence with conviction to do a highlight the way they want me to do it, and it worked out.
You mentioned the commercials, and then one of the things we're doing in this class is studying this because we have advertising students, and these were groundbreaking commercials.
Right.
What was your reaction when you first heard the concept for these commercials and they're using mascots and they're doing all sorts of crazy things? And why do you think they were so successful?
Well, the first reaction, and I think I can speak to all the anchors that I worked with back in the day, they were excited. I mean, in that first commercial shoot, you felt like you're in Hollywood. First of all, it took a long time, which we were not used to. So, we did this on our own, okay? When we shot these commercials, it was on our own time. We'd have to come before a show or after a show. And the result was great. We saw the result. First of all, they're funny as ever. And so we knew they were going to be a big hit with the viewer. And plus, they were professional advertising companies, right? Doing these commercials. Because that was always the big question out and about when you see fans and they would say, wow, we love those commercials. That's our favorite thing, right? And they go, did you write that? And I go, well, no, we write SportsCenter. We write our own copy. but those were professional advertising people, and you could see the difference. And you really had the feel like I felt when I did one of those commercials, you just wanted to go through a wall for that director. And they would take the time and give you the exact tone. And I would be like an actress, like, okay, tell me how it sounds, how you want me to deliver that line. So we got a really big kick out of it.
And what were some of your favorite commercials that you did?
Well, I'll tell you, I couldn't do enough. I wish they asked me to do more, but when I look back on the ones that I really loved, there was one back in the day I did with Evander Holyfield. He was running a daycare, and my daughter at the time was maybe 6 years old. She was in, and she was bouncing on one of those little bouncy balls, and it was about Evander Holyfield, right? Running an ESPN daycare. Little did we know, decade or so later, ESPN would have its own daycare, which would be funny. No Evander Holyfield. And of course, the other ones, one of my favorite teams that's well documented is the New York Rangers. And I've only done about maybe 10 Sports Center commercials in my 24 years. 2 of them were with New York Ranger goaltenders. Mike Richter back in 95 after they won the Cup in 94, and then Henrik Lundqvist a few years ago. So, and I played goalie. So can you imagine me on 2 Sports Center commercials, separate commercials with 2 different New York Ranger goalies?
Great. So let's fast forward. You've been doing it since 1990. Now it's 2016, I think, as we say that, right? Hard to believe. How is this whole thing evolved? How is it different? How is it the same?
Plenty that's different. A lot of pluses. A lot more pluses now than negatives, that's for sure. The only thing I miss is from the old days is that we were a smaller contingent. We knew Sports Center was on at 11 p.m. and 6 p.m. and 2 a.m. back in the day when I started. And it was appointment viewing. That is what I miss most. And that's what sports fans, a lot of them miss. Because now, of course, it's on all the time. Not that that's a bad thing. And the other cool thing about the old days compared to now, or even compared to like 2000, is when back in the old days, there was no bottom line. So when we delivered a story, a sports story, no internet. So people were hearing it for the very first time, and we were proud of our writing ability. Again, back to writing, because we were telling this story for the first time to viewers who did not know, and they did not see anything on the bottom line because there was no bottom line, and there was no internet, so they didn't know in advance what we'd be talking about.
But as we close here, but the foundation though is still the same, right? I mean, is it still this? Has that the idea of having fun, having a little bit of an attitude? Is that still that same common thread that kind of runs through doing these sports centers all these years?
Yes, I mean, you can see anyone who watches Sports Center now, it's everything you just said, but again, it's important to be there on big stories, great stories, sad stories. Nobody does it better than ESPN Sports Center. I'm not saying it because I've been there for 24 years. Look at all the people that tried to duplicate.
Right.
Couldn't, they failed, they went by the wayside. And I mentioned when they're big stories, when they're even sad stories. I was doing Sports Center the morning Muhammad Ali died. So we were on the air for 4+ hours type of thing. And everyone's sort of like, picks up their bootstraps type of thing and knows they're in it for the long haul, Ed. So even when something tragic happens or something amazing happens in sports, we are all in, and nobody does it better than us.
Always great to talk to you. And
same here. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Luck. I want to take your class.
It's open. You still have any credit hours left?
I'll look into it.
Okay, thanks. This is great. Thank you.